You know that feeling when you walk into your living room, maybe you're holding a cup of coffee, just starting your day, and your eyes just sort of drift up to the ceiling,
Hmm.
maybe right where the chimney breast meets the drywall, and there it is, that faint brownish yellow stain.
The dreaded water stain. It's like a Rorschach test for homeowners.
Exactly. And my immediate reaction, and I assume this is true for most people, is just, pure annoyance. It's aesthetic.
Right.
I'm standing there thinking, great, now I have to get the ladder out of the garage, find that half-empty can of Kills primer, and maybe repaint that entire corner so the white matches. It feels like a chore.
It feels like spilling coffee on a rug.
Yeah, that's it. But if you actually dig into the structural reality of masonry systems, which is, what we are doing today, that stain is not a spill.
No, it's a distress signal.
A distress signal. Okay, that sounds a little more ominous than just a paint job.
Well, it should. Because by the time you see water manifesting on the interior surfaces of your home, specifically around a chimney, you are witnessing the end result of a catastrophic failure.
A failure that's been going on for a while, I'm guessing.
A long time. The source material we have today is incredibly stark about this. It calls water intrusion one of the most destructive forces affecting chimney systems.
That is a strong statement. Destructive force. I
Yeah.
mean, we usually reserve that for things like, tornadoes or sledgehammers.
It fits, though, because we tend to think of bricks and mortar as invincible. They're stone, essentially.
Right, it's a rock. It can handle the rain.
But water destroys a chimney from the inside out. And that brings us to the mission for this deep dive, if you will. We need to completely reframe how we see that water.
Okay.
It isn't just about rotting wood framing in the attic or staining your drywall. The sources point to something called double damage.
Double damage. Okay, let's unpack that. I assume one half of that damage is just, the bricks falling apart.
Correct. That's the first part. Water physically destroys the structure. The bricks, the mortar, the liners. That's the structural damage.
And the second part.
But secondly, and this is the part most people never even consider, it degrades the thermal performance of the chimney.
Thermal performance, so you mean it changes how the fire actually burns?
It changes how the chimney functions as an exhaust machine. A wet chimney is an unsafe chimney, even if it isn't structurally falling down yet.
That is fascinating. So the water is attacking the bricks, but it's also attacking the draft, the airflow, the efficiency.
Precisely. And to really understand this, we have to follow the path of the water. We're going to trace it from the very top of the stack, the crown and the cap down through the masonry walls, and then finally to where the chimney fights with the roof line at the flashing.
It's a journey from the sky down to the attic. But before we climb up to the roof, I want to stick with this thermal performance concept because I think I get wet bricks cracking. We've all seen potholes in winter.
Right, the freeze-thaw cycle.
But how does water ruin the fire? You said double damage?
So to understand this, you have to think about the physics of a chimney. A chimney isn't just a tunnel for smoke. It's an engine.
An engine, okay.
And for it to work, for the smoke to go up and out, the flue needs to be hot. Heat rises. You want the internal flue gases to stay hot so they remain buoyant and draft upwards.
Right, hot air rises. Basic physics. If the air inside the chimney is hot, it shoots up.
Now, introduce water. Masonry so, brick, mortar, clay tile is porous. When it gets wet, it absorbs that water. And here is the kicker. Water has a very high specific heat capacity.
Okay, take us back to high school science. Specific heat capacity means...
It means water is incredibly stubborn about changing temperature. It takes a massive amount of energy to heat up water compared to heating up stone or air.
So if your bricks are soaked...
Well, the source material describes a wet chimney as a heat sink. That's the technical term.
Oh, heat sink.
Yeah. Instead of the masonry reflecting the heat back into the flue to create a strong draft, the wet bricks act like a sponge, sucking the heat out of the rising gases.
They're stealing the energy.
They are stealing the energy from the smoke, just to evaporate the water that's trapped in the walls.
It's like trying to start a fire in a damp cave.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
You're fighting the environment before you even get a draft going. And the consequence of that is a cold start.
A cold start?
You light your fire, but the chimney is cold and damp. The draft is weak because the air is cooling down too fast. So instead of the smoke shooting up the flue...
It spills out into your living room.
Exactly. The system can't establish a vacuum because the walls were effectively a cold, wet sponge.
And while you're coughing in a smoky room, wondering why your fireplace doesn't work like it used to, there's something chemical happening too, right?
Yeah.
The sources mentioned creosote.
And this is where it gets dangerous. Creosote forms when smoke condenses.
Right.
Smoke condenses when it cools down.
Mm-hmm.
So if your wet chimney walls are robbing heat from the smoke, the flue gas temperature drops below the critical threshold much, much faster.
So the water cools the smoke turns into liquid creosote, and it just sticks to the walls.
It accelerates creosote formation dramatically. But here's the detail that really stood out to me in the research.
What's that?
Water doesn't just create more creosote. It changes the chemistry of the creosote itself.
It changes the chemistry.
Because it's acidic. The interaction between the water vapor and the sulfur and nitrates in the smoke creates acids. Moist creosote becomes highly corrosive.
So now you have this acidic sludge just sitting inside your chimney.
Right. And if you have a metal liner or components for a gas appliance, that acid is actively eating away at them.
Wow. So it's not just dirty, it's corrosive. It's basically eating the chimney from the inside.
Especially in gas appliance flues. We often think gas is clean, right? No logs, no mess.
Yeah, that's the perception.
But gas combustion produces a huge amount of water vapor. If you add external water intrusion to that, you create an incredibly corrosive environment that can destroy clay liners and rust out metal components in a fraction of their expected lifespan.
So, summary of this first section. A wet chimney isn't just a leaky chimney. It's a cold chimney, a poor drafting chimney, and a creosote-generating machine.
A wet chimney cannot heat properly, draft properly, or vent safely, period. It compromises the entire function of the appliance.
Okay, that's the why we should care part. That raises the stakes significantly. So now let's talk about how the water actually gets in. We're going to the top of the stack, the crown.
The first line of defense, and often the most poorly constructed part of the entire house.
Now, I'll be honest, before reading this, I thought the crown was just that glob of cement they smooth out on the top of the bricks. I figured, hey, slap some mortar up there, smooth it out with a trowel, call it a day.
And unfortunately, that is exactly how many masons, especially if they're rushing, treat it. They call it a mortar wash or a splay.
But that's not right.
Not at all. The source material is very specific here. It distinguishes between a glob of mortar and a proper architectural feature. A crown should be concrete, not mortar.
What's the difference? I mean, to the layman, they both look like gray, hard stuff.
The difference is porosity and strength. Mortar is designed to bond bricks together. It's actually designed to be a little bit porous. But a crown needs to be a roof. It needs to repel weather.
So concrete is just denser?
It's dense, it's durable, and it's weather resistant. The source references ASTM C1283. That's the standard for chimney crowns.
We love a good ASTM standard. What does it say?
It says a crown needs to be poured concrete and it needs to be substantial. We're talking at least 2 inches thick at the edges and thicker in the center.
Why thicker in the center?
To create a slope, think about it. You would never build a flat roof on your house without layers of rubber and tar, right?
No, of course not.
Because water pools on flat surfaces.
Right, gravity needs help.
Exactly. But you see flat chimney crowns all the time. The source says a crown needs a minimum slope of about 10 degrees. If it's flat, water pools.
Wow.
If water pools on masonry, it absorbs. It's unavoidable. It's just gravity and time.
There was one detail about the crown that I found really cool. The drip edge. It sounds like a band name, but it's actually physics.
It is pure physics. It deals with surface tension.
Explain that, because I think most people imagine water just falls off the edge of things.
It doesn't, actually. Imagine water running off the edge of a flat table. It doesn't just shoot off straight like a projectile.
No, it tends to curl under the edge and run back along the underside, right? It dribbles down the legs.
The same thing happens on a chimney crown. If the concrete just ends flush with the bricks, or even if it overhangs but is flat underneath, the water rolls over the edge, curls under, and runs straight down the face of the chimney breaks.
Keeping the vertical walls constantly wet.
Constantly. So the drip edge is a groove.
That's what I was thinking.
It's a projection combined with a void. The crown should extend past the chimney walls, kind of like the eaves of a house, and on the underside of that overhang, there should be a slot or a groove cast right into the concrete.
Ah, okay. So the water travels underneath, it hits that groove.
And it can't jump the gap. The surface tension just breaks.
And it drips cleanly.
Cleanly. Gravity takes over, and the water drips straight to the roof, missing the chimney bricks entirely.
That is such a tiny detail, a little groove in the concrete. But without it, you're just washing your chimney walls every single time it rains.
And causing spalling and efflorescence, which we'll get to. It's a simple engineering fix that saves the entire stack.
Wow.
But there's one more critical measurement at the crown, the flue tile height.
The clay pipe sticking out of the middle?
Correct. That cannot be flush with the crown. The source material demands it extends 2 to 4 inches upward.
Why is that?
Well, imagine the crown is a funnel. Because remember, we sloped it to shed water. If the hole in the middle, the flue, is level with the bottom of that funnel, where does the water go?
Right down the hole.
Directly into your fireplace. You need that vertical standoff to act as a curb to prevent runoff from dumping into the exhaust system.
Okay, so sticking out of that flue tile, ideally, is a chimney cap. This is the lid of the system.
The umbrella.
And yet, people leave them off. The source calls a missing cap an open wound.
It's a very apt metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Without a cap, the flue is just a wide open hole facing the sky. Rain, snow, sleet. It all falls straight down.
Hits the smoke chamber, the damper, the firebox.
All of it. And we're back to the cold sponge effect we talked about.
Instantly, you are saturating the interior.
And remember, the interior is where the delicate parts are. The damper mechanism, the metal firebox. But let's talk about the caps themselves, because just having one isn't always enough. You can't just throw anything up there.
You mean the ones you grab at the hardware store? The generic, one-size-fits-all deals?
Slip-in caps.
Yeah.
The source material is very critical of these. They usually have friction legs, tension springs that push against the inside of the flue tile to hold it in place.
That sounds temporary.
It is. Wind, vibration, thermal expansion from the heat of the fire. These things cause those caps to loosen. They can tilt, which allows leaks.
Okay, that's bad.
But the nightmare scenario is that they slip down.
Down into the chimney?
Yes. They can slide down the flue, turn sideways, and completely block the exit. Now you have a carbon monoxide hazard because the smoke can't get out.
And you wouldn't necessarily know it from the ground.
You might not know until your CO detector goes off, or until everyone in the house gets a headache. It turns your chimney into a corked bottle.
Yikes. Okay, note to self, bolt it down, don't trust friction.
And watch out for rust. A rusted cap is worse than ugly. The source mentions that once rust penetrates the metal top plate, water drips through it like a colander.
Oh, wow.
And often that water drips right onto the crown we just talked about or into the flue. It's a compounding cycle. A bad cap ruins a good crown.
So we've covered the top, the crown, and the cap. Now we're moving down. The vertical walls, the bricks and the mortar.
The sponge walls, as the source called them.
Now, I think most people assume bricks are waterproof. Like they're hard, they're fired clay, they seem solid.
They seem that way.
If I spray a hose at a brick wall, it just looks wet. It doesn't look like it's drinking it.
It looks that way, but if you look closer, they're absolutely not waterproof. Bricks and mortar are porous. They work via capillary action.
That's the wicking effect, right? Like dipping a sugar cube in coffee.
Exactly. Think of a paper towel dipping into a spill. The water climbs up the towel against gravity. Masonry does the same thing. It draws moisture inward into the microscopic pores of the material. It wants to absorb that water.
And this leads to one of the most violent things that happens to a chimney, the freeze-thaw cycle.
This is where the physics gets destructive. Water enters the pore of a brick. At night, let's say it's January, the temperature drops below freezing. Water is unique in physics because it expands when it freezes by about 9%.
9% doesn't sound like a lot.
In a balloon? No. But in a confined space, like a microscopic pore inside a rock, that expansion exerts hydraulic pressure that is massive. It can exceed 25,000 psi.
25,000 psi, that's stronger than the brick.
It's stronger than the stone itself. Something has to give.
And that something is the face of the brick.
Exactly. It pops off. We call it spalling. If you walk around your house and see flakes of red clay on your roof shingles or on your patio, that is your chimney slowly disintegrating.
And the mortar joints wash out too, right?
They turn to sand. The binder just dissolves. And now you have physical voids, actual holes in your chimney stack.
Okay, here is a point from the source that blew my mind. It compared chimney walls to house walls. If I have a brick house, why doesn't it rot like a chimney? And the answer was weep holes.
This is a crucial architectural difference. A brick wall on a house is usually a veneer. It's a skin, there is an air gap behind it, and at the bottom, there are little holes, weep holes, that let any water that gets through the brick drain out.
But a chimney?
A chimney is a solid masonry mass. There is no gap. There are no weep holes.
Well, it's a trap.
It's a trap. Once water gets into a chimney stack, it has no exit. It has to evaporate, which takes a long, long time. So the chimney stays damp for huge periods of time.
Is that where that smell comes from? You know, that musty wet ash smell?
Oh, yeah. The old fireplace smell.
I thought that was just character.
That is the smell of trapped water inside a solid masonry structure that cannot dry out. It's mold and damp soot.
So what do you do? I mean, my instinct says paint it. Get some heavy-duty waterproof sealant, maybe that rubberized stuff they show on TV, and just rack that chimney in plastic, essentially.
And that would be a disaster. The source material gives a very, very strong warning here. Do not seal it tight.
Why? Wouldn't that keep the water out?
It keeps liquid water out, yes. But moisture also moves as a vapor. Moisture from inside the house, from the flue gases, travels through the bricks from the inside out.
Right.
If you coat the outside with a non-breathable sealant, you trap that vapor inside the brick.
You're locking the moisture in the cage.
And when it freezes, the damage is catastrophic because the brick is 100% saturated. You peel the face off the entire chimney. You need a breathable water repellent.
Breathable?
It's a chemical treatment, siloxane or silane-based usually, that has molecules small enough to stop liquid rain from entering, but large enough gaps to let water vapor escape.
So it's like Gore-Tex for your chimney.
Gore-Tex for bricks. That is the perfect way to visualize it. It stops the rain, but it lets the sweat out.
Okay, moving on. We've gone from the crayon, down the walls. Now we hit the roof. This is the intersection, the flashing.
The most high-risk zone for leaks in the entire roofing system.
The sources outline a trifecta of waterproofing. 3 parts that have to work together. The cricket, the step flashing, and the counter flashing.
Right.
Let's start with the cricket, which, again, not a bug.
No, not a bug. A cricket is a small, peaked roof built behind the chimney.
Behind it, like on the uphill side of the roof.
Correct. If your chimney is wide, and the rule of thumb is 30 inches or wider, and it sits at the bottom of a sloped roof, think about the water coming down that roof during a heavy rain. It hits the back of the chimney like a wave hitting a cliff.
And if there's no cricket?
It pools. The source calls this the damming effect.
Yeah.
The water hits the chimney, stops, and just sits there. It creates a little pond behind your stack.
And standing water is the enemy.
Standing water will find a way in. It rots the roof deck. It erodes the mortar. A cricket splits that water stream like the bow of a boat. It diverts it to the left and right, so it flows around the chimney and continues down the roof.
The diverter. Got it. Next is step flashing. The weaver.
Step flashing is called that because it looks like steps going up the side of the chimney. It's L-shaped metal pieces. And the key is that it must be woven into the shingles.
So shingle flashing, shingle flashing.
Exactly. You want the water to always flow over the metal, not under it. If you just slap a long piece of metal on top of the shingles, water runs underneath it. If you weave it, the water runs off the shingle onto the metal, then off the metal onto the next shingle. It keeps the water on the surface.
Okay. And finally, the counter flashing. This is the one where I feel like I see the most bad DIY job.
Oh, absolutely. This is the raglet versus caulk debate.
And the source was pretty harsh on the caulk method.
Rightfully so. So, counter flashing is the piece of metal that covers the top of the step flashing. It protects the gap. The right way to install it is to cut a groove, a raglet, actually into the brick mortar joint.
You take a grinder and cut into the chimney?
Yes. You make dust. You make a mess.
Yeah.
You bend the metal, stick it into that groove, and then seal it in. That creates a mechanical lock. Water running down the brick hits the metal and is forced out.
And the lazy way.
The lazy way and the common way is to just nail the metal flat against the brick face and smear a thick bead of caulk along the top edge.
The old caulk and pray.
Exactly. And why does it fail? Because caulk dries. It cracks in the sun. It shrinks. It has a lifespan of maybe 5 years if you're lucky.
And once that bead of caulk cracks,
water runs down the brick, slips right behind the caulk, goes behind the flashing, and dumps directly into your attic. And because it's behind the metal, you don't see it.
Right, until you see that stain on the ceiling we talked about at the very beginning.
There it is. Full circle.
It's amazing how these things are connected. We're in our last section now, the synthesis. Because none of these things happen in a vacuum, do they?
Never. That's the systemic view. You rarely see just one failure.
Give me a scenario. How does the domino effect work?
Okay, so imagine a chimney with no cricket. Water pools behind it. That standing water rots the flashing. At the same time, the crown up top is made of thin mortar, so it cracks.
Right.
Now water is soaking the inside of the walls.
So it's being attacked from above and below.
Simultaneously. The bricks are saturated, they start to spall, the mortar joints wash out. Now the structure itself is weakening. The smoke chamber parging, that's the smooth lining inside, starts to crumble because the moisture broke the bond.
And the whole time, the homeowner is just sitting there thinking, man, my fireplace is kind of smoky lately.
Right. They think it's a draft problem. They don't realize the chimney is literally dissolving. The source material mentions partial structural failure and leaning stacks. That's the endgame.
A chimney that actually detaches from the house.
Or collapses internally is a terrifying thought. A pile of bricks falling into your living room or off your roof.
It happens, and it all starts with water management.
That's it.
So, let's wrap this up. We started with the stain. We found out that stain is the tip of the iceberg.
The key takeaway for any listener is simple. A dry chimney is a safe chimney. If you have water, you have damage, you have structural damage, and you have performance damage.
You mentioned invisible maintenance earlier.
Yeah, we wait for things to break, we wait for the car to make a noise, we wait for the pipe to burst. But with a chimney, by the time you see the symptom, the stain, the disease is advanced.
The masonry has been soaking for years.
Exactly. So my challenge to the listener is this. Go outside. Right now, or tomorrow morning. Look up.
What are we looking for?
Do you see a drip edge on the crown, or is it flush? Do you see a cricket behind the chimney? Do you see a cap?
And if you see rust stains running down the side?
That's your cap failing. These signs are visible from the ground. You don't need to be an expert to spot the absence of a cricket or a rusted cap.
It's preventative medicine for your house.
It is. Catch it before the bricks start popping. Catch it before the water creates that acidic creosote that eats your liner.
It's a compelling argument. Look up, save your chimney.
And save yourself a lot of money and a potential fire hazard.
I think I'm going to go buy some binoculars.
Not a bad investment. We tend to think of a chimney as a passive object.
Yeah, just an exhaust pipe.
Exactly. But when you really dig into the engineering and the failures, you realize a chimney is actually a complex machine. It is managing intense heat, airflow dynamics, pressure differentials, and most critically for our discussion today, it is fighting a constant losing war against water.
And that is the theme of today's deep dive, the invisible enemy. We are working off a really comprehensive technical guide titled Chimney Moisture Intrusion and Diagnostic Leak Analysis. And honestly, reading this, it felt less like a construction manual and more like a horror story for homeowners.
It really is.
It's basically a forensic pathology report on how houses die.
It's not far off, because the water isn't just falling down the hole. That's the cartoon version of a leak. If rain falls down the hole, you get a wet log. That's annoying, but it's not catastrophic.
Yeah.
The reality is moisture migration and chemical reactions inside the flue and design flaws that turn solid masonry into a sponge.
A masonry sponge. That is a terrifying image for something holding up part of my house.
It should be.
So our mission today is to uncover the specific, often hidden ways water destroys chimneys from the inside out. We've got a roadmap that covers everything from structural traps things called shoulders and corbelling, which we will explain to you the chemistry of your gas fireplace, which, spoiler alert, is basically a water manufacturing plant.
A very efficient one at that.
Exactly.
We'll also touch on the red flags you can see from the ground, like that white powder on bricks, and the specific weaknesses in those metal prefab chimneys.
Okay.
And finally, we'll talk about how the experts actually prove where a leak is coming from, because it is rarely where you think it is.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the masonry sponge. I want to talk about shoulders. When I look at a classic brick chimney, sometimes it's wide at the bottom, maybe at a fireplace inside, and then it steps in to get narrower as it goes up.
Right.
Those steps are the shoulders.
Right. Those are the shoulders. And architecturally, they look great. They give the chimney mass and stability at the base, but allow for a sleeker profile up top.
It breaks things up visually.
It breaks up the monotony of a straight vertical column. But from a waterproofing perspective, every single one of those steps is a massive liability.
Because it's a flat surface where water can land?
It creates a pause for the water. Gravity wants to pull rain straight down to the ground. A shoulder stops it. It intercepts the rain. Now, if that shoulder isn't designed perfectly to shed water, it becomes a hidden pathway. The guide talks extensively about this. The biggest issue usually starts with how the bricks are laid to create that step. This brings us to a term called corbelling.
Corbelling. It sounds elegant, like something you'd find in a cathedral.
It does, but it's just a fancy masonry word for stepping the brick outward or inward from the vertical face. You're hanging a brick slightly off the edge of the one below it to create that slope.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, there are strict rules for this. The International Residential Code, specifically IRC R1000 3.5, has a very specific math for this.
Oh, wow. So there's a code for how far you can stick a brick out.
A very specific one. It states that the projection of a single course, meaning one row of bricks, cannot exceed 1/2 the height of the brick, or 1/3 of its depth.
That seems incredibly precise. Why does the code care so much about the math? Is it just so the chimney doesn't tip over?
It's structural, yes, but for our discussion, it's about water intrusion. This is the detail that catches everyone off guard. Standard bricks often have holes in them.
Right, the 3 holes, like a miniature cinder block. I always wondered what those were for.
Exactly. Those are called cores. They reduce weight and help the brick fire evenly in the kiln. Here's the problem. If a mason gets lazy or tries to make a really aggressive step to look cool, and they exceed that corbelling limit,
They expose the holes.
they expose the cores on the underside of the overhang.
Oh, I see. So if you were standing at the bottom of the chimney looking up at the step, you wouldn't see solid brick. You'd be looking straight into the hollow belly of the brick.
Precisely. You're looking into these little tunnels.
Yeah.
And what happens when wind-driven rain hits the side of that chimney? It splashes up, or it wicks in through capillary action. It finds those exposed holes and voids. The guide describes these as cavities where water can collect and migrate. It's not just getting the surface wet. The water enters the hollow core of the brick, saturates the masonry behind the shoulder, and then gravity takes over. It travels downward.
And where does it go? Because it's not dripping into the fireplace yet. It's inside the wall of the chimney.
Not yet. It creates a hidden pathway. It migrates down into the smoke chamber.
The smoke chamber, that's the part right above the firebox, right? The sort of funnel-shaped area.
Exactly. It's the area that funnels the smoke into the narrow flue. The guide notes that water entering through these corbelling flaws can saturate the smoke chamber walls.
Which explains why people sometimes see cracks or deterioration there and can't figure out why. They think, my roof must be leaking, but the leak is actually originating inside the masonry 10 feet above the roofline.
That's the classic misdiagnosis. It causes deterioration of the parging inside the chamber and can even damage the flue tile connection deep inside the structure. It's rotting the system from the middle out.
Okay, we are going to hit pause on your training session for just a minute. I know you're probably deep in the weeds of, a flue liner tutorial or something, but we really need to talk about who is actually producing all of this content.
Right. If you're here watching these videos, you're already getting the benefit of the training. But there's a much bigger ecosystem behind this YouTube channel. We're looking at chimneysweeps.com, and it's pretty clear this isn't just a media company. It's more like a funnel, a vetting engine for the industry.
That's a really important distinction, because usually with these online directories, you just pay a fee, you get your pin on a map. Is that what's happening here? Is this just another pay-to-play model?
No. The documentation we have suggests it's the opposite. It seems like they're trying to solve that classic low bidder problem that plagues the trades. They're not looking for advertisers. They're building a vetted network. And that standard, it seems to come directly from the founder, Ray Gessner.
I was looking at his bio. You don't often see this kind of background. It's this mix of high-level academic engineering and, actual trade mastery. You usually get the guy in the office or the guy in the truck.
Exactly. And that combination is really the key here. Ray isn't just some tech guy. He has a master's degree in civil engineering. He's a licensed professional engineer, a PE in multiple states.
But he also holds master licenses, HVAC, gas fitter, plumber.
And he's a certified home inspector through NACI.
So he's looking at a chimney as both a structural engineer and as a hands-on inspector. But how does that actually translate to the platform? Is it just good branding?
It seems to be baked right into the gatekeeping. Because he understands the physics, the code, the actual science behind it, the platform can enforce a technical standard that, a simple lead gen site just couldn't. Which brings us to their whole gold standard vetting process.
Okay, right. So for the professionals listening right now, the ones who are already doing great work, how does the platform actually verify that? How do they filter out the noise?
Well, it starts with the basics, the non-negotiables. You have to have the proper licensing, general liability insurance, workers' comp, all of that.
The table stakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the real barrier to entry is the CCI exam, the Certified Chimney Inspector Test.
And this isn't just one of those watch a video and click a button certifications.
Oh, far from it. Ray Gessner developed this exam himself to test for technical accuracy, safety knowledge. It's designed to be difficult. It's a filter, plain and simple. It ensures that if a homeowner finds you through them, they're not just getting a name from a list. They're getting someone who passed a really tough technical evaluation.
Okay, so let's say a listener runs that gauntlet. They've got the insurance, they study, they pass the CCI exam, they're in. What's the actual utility for them? Why jump through all those hoops instead of, say, just buying more Google ads?
Because it shifts you from just being listed somewhere to being part of an operational support system. The sources show a few key benefits. First, there's the proprietary inspection report software.
Which I'm guessing is based on those same engineering standards we were just talking about.
Precisely. It automates the reporting, so your paperwork has the same rigor as the inspection itself. Then there's the community. You get access to these monthly online forums, mentorship, networking. It's like a mastermind group for ethical operators.
And that brings us to getting the actual clients. Let's talk about the number 833-CHIMNEY.
That's the engine. The website, that phone number, they drive homeowners who are specifically looking for qualified professionals. These are not people just shopping for the cheapest price. They're looking for vetted expertise for big jobs, relining, structural engineering inspections.
So it creates this kind of feedback loop. You watch the free training, like the video you're probably watching right now, to get better at your job. Then you pass the exam to prove you're good. And then the platform sends you customers who actually value and are willing to pay for that expertise.
It helps the good guys build stronger businesses because they finally stop competing with the companies that are just cutting corners. It really elevates the trade.
So I guess here's the challenge for everyone listening. You are sitting here right now. You're learning for free from one of the best sources in the world. But the real question is, are you ready to capitalize on it? Are you good enough to pass that CCI exam, to join the network, and be recognized as one of the best?
If you think you're operating at that level, head over to the site. Click Join Us.
All right, we'll let you get back to your training now. Thanks for listening. You mentioned parging just now inside the chamber, but the source material also talks about parging on the outside, specifically on those shoulders. What exactly is parging?
Think of it like icing on a cake, but the icing is cement. Parging is a smooth coating meant to help water flow off the shoulder. A chimney shoulder shouldn't just be exposed brick steps.
So it shouldn't look like a little staircase.
It shouldn't. It should be parged, which means coated with a smooth, cement-like finish that is sloped to shed water. Think of it like a ramp.
So the rain hits the ramp and slides off.
That is the goal. But the source indicates a common defect is leaving shoulders rough, uncoated, or loosely mortared.
Right, so the water just sits there.
It allows water to rest in pockets between the bricks. Or, even worse, the mason tries to be decorative.
The decorative trap, I saw this in the notes. This is when it looks pretty, but it's actually a disaster.
A total disaster. They build what's called a brick drip edge. Instead of a proper poured concrete crown or a parged slope, they use bricks to create the top edge. Maybe they lay them on their side or at an angle.
To give it some flair.
Right.
Yeah.
But the guide is very critical of this. It says these are porous, poorly sloped, and full of mortar joints.
It sounds like they're intentionally building a sponge on top of the chimney because it looks fancy.
That is essentially what it is. A proper crown, according to ASTM C12283 standards, and the guide references these standards, often needs to be concrete, poured in place, with an overhang.
Not just a collection of bricks and mortar.
No. But a brick drip edge absorbs water through all those little mortar joints. And worse, because it doesn't have a drip slot, it channels water down the face of the chimney, rather than away from it.
So you're feeding water directly into those corbelling voids we just talked about.
Exactly. It's a compounding failure.
Yeah.
The decorative edge catches the water, the lack of overhang lets it run down the face, and the exposed corbelling drinks it in. It creates a continuous cycle of saturation. The guide mentions that this moisture, deep inside the masonry, cools the chimney mass.
Which I assume is bad for a chimney.
Very bad. A cold chimney doesn't draft as well. It doesn't pull the smoke up efficiently. It promotes creosote formation because the smoke cools down too fast.
The sticky, flammable stuff.
The very stuff that causes chimney fires. And structurally, it accelerates freeze-thaw damage. If that water freezes inside the brick, it expands and cracks the masonry. You'll literally see the faces of the bricks popping off. It's called spalling.
It's amazing how much damage comes just from the shape of the bricks. But I want to pivot because the guide has this section that completely blew my mind. We've been talking about rainwater coming from the sky.
Right, the obvious source.
But there's a whole section on the chemistry of combustion.
This is the aha moment for most people.
The idea that the fire itself is making water, it sounds completely backwards.
It's basic chemistry, but we rarely think about it. When you burn natural gas, which is methane, you are burning hydrocarbons.
Hydrogen and carbon.
Exactly. The hydrogen in the fuel reacts with oxygen in the air. Hydrogen plus oxygen equals HO.
Water?
Water vapor, specifically. But it's not a negligible amount. The guide gives a very specific statistic that stops people in their tracks.
Yeah, okay, I'm ready.
For every 100,000 BTUs of natural gas burned, roughly 1 gallon of water is produced as vapor.
1 gallon.
1 gallon.
That is staggering. So if I have a decent-sized fireplace, say it's 50,000 BTUs, and I run it for a cozy evening, maybe 4 hours.
Let's see, 50,000 BTUs is half a gallon an hour, so 4 hours. You've just created 2 gallons of water inside your chimney.
2 gallons? That's unbelievable.
Now, in a perfect world, that vapor stays hot, stays a gas, travels up the flue, and floats away into the atmosphere. No harm done.
But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world of physics.
We do. And gas exhaust has a unique problem compared to wood smoke. It is cooler.
Cooler. I think all fire is just hot.
Well, lead fires are. They're hot, roaring beasts. Gas flames are efficient and controlled, but the exhaust temperature is lower. That means it is much closer to its dew point.
The dew point being the temperature where vapor turns back into liquid, like on a cold glass in the summer.
Correct. So imagine this vapor rising up your chimney. If that chimney has offsets, meaning the flue tiles aren't perfectly straight, maybe they shift to the left or right to get around an attic obstacle, those offsets create shelves.
A little ledge inside the chimney.
Exactly. And the vapor hits the shelf.
It hits the shelf or the ledge created by the misalignment. That brick or tile is cooler than the gas. The vapor hits it, cools rapidly, and condenses. Instantly, you have liquid water inside your flue, and gravity takes over again.
Right. It runs down the inside of the chimney. It saturates the smoke chamber, the firebox walls.
Yeah.
The guide talks about it deteriorating the mortar joints between the flue tiles.
So you could have a chimney that looks perfect on the outside, has a waterproof cap, waterproof crown, everything, but it's rotting from the inside because of the fire itself.
Precisely. This is why sizing is so critical. The source material discusses liner sizing. If you stick a small gas appliance into a giant old masonry chimney without a proper liner, what happens?
The gas expands.
It expands into that huge space. And when gas expands, it cools. It's the ideal gas law. It cools so fast that it hits the dew point before it even gets out of the house.
So it literally rains inside your chimney.
It rains inside your chimney every time you turn on the fireplace.
Wow. And the guide mentions insulation, too. What's the role of insulation here?
Yes, this is just as important. If you have a metal liner but no insulation around it and it's a cold winter day, that metal is freezing cold. The warm, moist vapor touches the cold wall and instantly condenses. It's like a cold soda can on a hot day, but in reverse and on a massive scale.
And this isn't just pure, clean mountain spring water, is it?
No, this is the scary part. The guide explains that this condensate mixes with other byproducts of combustion, like carbon dioxide and sulfur that might be present in the gas.
So it becomes acidic?
It becomes a mild carbonic and sulfuric acid.
So we are creating acid rain inside our living room walls.
Essentially. The guide warns that this acidic condensate eats away at clay tiles, dissolves mortar, and causes rust on metal clean-out doors. It can literally dissolve the chimney liner over time.
That is terrifying. It's like the chimney is digesting itself.
A pretty good analogy, actually.
The fix for that, according to the source, is proper code compliance.
Yes. Using properly sized, insulated stainless steel liners that keep the gas hot enough to exit the building before it turns into water. The sizing keeps the velocity up, and the insulation keeps the flue gas hot. If the gas stays hot, it stays a vapor. If it stays a vapor, it leaves the house.
Okay, so we have rain attacking from the outside via the shoulders, and we have chemical water attacking from the inside via condensation. Is there a way to tell? Does the chimney give us a sign?
It does. It gives us a visual clue called efflorescence.
That's the white stuff, right? I see it on brick buildings all the time. It looks like chalk or powder.
That is it. A lot of people think it's just stain or mold or dirt, or they think it's just old brick things. But the guide explains the mechanism. It is salt.
Salt, like table salt.
Mineral salts, yeah. Masonry materials, brick, mortar, concrete, contain natural salts. When water moves through the brick, it dissolves those salts. It carries them in solution to the surface.
Okay.
When the water reaches the surface, the sun and wind evaporate the water, but the salt gets left behind.
So if I see that white powder, it is proof positive that water traveled through that brick.
Exactly. It is the footprint of water migration. The guide calls its presence a key diagnostic value. It tells a story. If you see it, the chimney is wet, period.
But here is where it gets interesting. The guide distinguishes between what causes it in gas versus wood chimneys.
Yes, and this is crucial for diagnosis. If you have a gas appliance and you see efflorescence, it often means the chimney is rotting from the inside out. That acidic moisture we just talked about is soaking through the liner, through the brick, and pushing salt out the face.
That sounds like a massive repair bill.
It usually is. It implies the liner has failed, or was never there to begin with. Now, in wood-burning systems, efflorescence is usually from external intrusion.
From the rain.
Right. Rain entering through a crack, a bad crown, or those bad shoulders we talked about. The water soaks in from the top or sides and pushes the salt out. Still a problem, but a different kind of problem.
I feel like the instinct for a homeowner seeing white stains on their brick is to go buy a scrub brush and some cleaner.
And that is the worst thing you can do if you stop there. The guide is very clear on this treatment myth busting. You cannot just scrub it off. It's like painting over a leak in the ceiling.
It'll just come back.
It'll always come back. The efflorescence is the symptom, not the disease. You have to stop the water source first.
And there was a specific warning about sealers.
Yes, this is a common and very damaging mistake. People see a wet brick and think, I'll seal it with a waterproof coating. But if you use a non-breathable sealer, you trap the moisture inside.
You lock the water in.
You lock it in. Imagine wrapping a wet sponge in plastic wrap. It never dries out. And then freeze-thaw cycles happen, and the faces of the bricks pop off.
So you make the problem 100 times worse.
Exactly. The guide emphasizes that you must only use breathable water repellents, and only after repairs are made, and the chimney has had a chance to completely dry out.
Okay, moving on. We've focused heavily on masonry bricks and mortar, but a lot of modern homes have prefab chimneys. These are the ones that look like wood or siding structures on the roof with a metal pipe sticking out.
The doghouse chimney. Or a chase, technically.
Right. Surely those are safer from water. They don't have porous bricks to soak it up.
You would hope so, but they have their own specific and often catastrophic failure points. They rely entirely on a component called the chase cover.
The chase cover, that's the metal lid on top of the box structure.
Correct, and unlike a masonry crown, which is thick concrete, this is a sheet of metal. The guide calls it the primary waterproofing system. If it fails, everything fails.
What does a failure look like there? Is it just rust?
Rust is a big one, but the failure often starts with the design. Let's talk about the anatomy of a good one first. The source reference is ASTM C2283 again. A proper chase cover needs a minimum 4-inch overhang and a flared drip edge.
Why does the flare matter? That seems like such a small detail.
Physics again. Surface tension. Water loves to stick to surfaces. If the metal just bends 90 degrees straight down, water will curl around that edge and run back up underneath, or drip directly down the side of the chase.
Rotting the wood siding.
Exactly. The flare kicks the metal out at an angle at the bottom. It breaks the surface tension, so water is forced to drip away from the siding. It seems like a tiny detail, but without it, water funnels right into the walls.
The guide also mentioned cross breaks. That sounds like a dance move, but I assume it's structural.
Not quite. If you look at the top of a metal box, it's flat. Flat roofs hold water. A cross break is when the fabricator puts a slight X-shaped crease in the metal, raising the center. It forces water to shed off the sides.
So no bird baths on top of the chimney.
Exactly. Without cross breaks, you get pooling. Pooling leads to rust, especially with cheap galvanized steel, which most builders use. Once you rust through, you have a hole directly into the chase. Water drips onto the firebox, the insulation, the framing.
And then there's the storm collar. The guide calls this the smallest weak link.
It is tiny. It's that little metal skirt that wraps around the round pipe, right above the chase cover. Its only job is to cover the gap between the pipe and the lid.
And it relies on silicone, right?
That is the problem. It is usually sealed with high-temp silicone. But the sun, the UV rays, the heat from the fire, the freezing winter, it all degrades that silicone. It cracks, it pulls away. Or the collar itself just gets loose from expansion and contraction.
And if that seal breaks,
water runs down the pipe, slips right under the collar, goes through the hole in the chase cover, and you have water pouring into the center of your chimney system.
It's amazing. You can have a giant, expensive house ruined by a $10 ring of metal and some old caulk.
That is the reality. Rusted fireboxes, mold in the walls, electrical failures if there's wiring in the chase. The guide lists all these consequences, all from one small ring of metal.
Okay, so we've covered design flaws, chemistry flaws, and maintenance flaws. But the guide has one section that feels almost hopeless. The unfixable problem, lateral rain.
It is the one thing you cannot fully engineer away.
Because rain doesn't always fall down.
Exactly. In a severe storm with winds at, say, 40 or 50 miles per hour, wind can push rain horizontally. Now think about your chimney cap. It has mesh on the side, right?
To keep the squirrels and birds out.
Right. But for smoke to get out, that mesh has to be open. If it's open enough for smoke to leave, it is open enough for wind-driven rain to enter.
That makes sense. It's a screen door. If you spray a hose at a screen door, the water goes through.
Precisely. The guide explains that tall chimneys, or those on the end of a house, specifically the gable end, are most susceptible because they catch the full force of the wind. The rain blows sideways, goes right through the mesh, hits the flue tile, and runs down.
So what do? Do you just accept wet carpets?
You can mitigate it, but you can't cure it completely. The guide suggests caps with larger overhangs, like a big umbrella hat, so the rain has to travel further sideways to get in.
Make the journey harder for the water.
Right. Or storm-proof caps that have baffles to create a tortuous path for the air. It forces the rain to make sharp turns, and the water droplets, being heavier than air, can't make the turn and fall out, but the takeaway is stark. Even a perfect cap can't stop 100% of lateral rain during severe storms.
So if you have a massive storm and find a little water in the fireplace, it might not be a broken chimney. It might just be physics.
It might just be the nature of venting. You have a hole in your roof, sometimes water gets in the hole.
This brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. We've talked about all these ways water gets in, but if I'm a homeowner and I see a stain on my ceiling, how does anyone know which one it is? Is it the flashing?
Yeah.
The shoulders? The storm caller? The guide outlines a detective protocol.
This is the controlled water test. And it is fascinating because it is so methodical. The biggest confusion, according to the source, is blaming the chimney for a roof leak, or vice versa.
Right, because the chimney goes through the roof. It's a crime scene with two suspects, and they're standing right next to each other.
Exactly. So the controlled water test is designed to isolate variables, and you have to do it in a specific order, bottom up.
What bottom up? My instinct would be to get on the roof and spray the top, get it over with.
That is the rookie mistake. Think about it. If you spray the top of the chimney first and water comes in, you don't know if it leaked in at the top or if it ran down the side and leaked in at the flashing at the bottom. You've wetted the whole thing. You learned nothing. You've contaminated your evidence.
That makes total sense. So step one.
Step one, lower masonry. You get a hose and you spray the shoulders and the brick body first. Just the masonry below the roof line. You have someone inside watching. If it leaks, you know the structure is porous or the shoulders are bad. Test over. You found it.
Okay, and if it doesn't leak, step two.
Step two is the roof deck. You move your spray to the shingles around the chimney, but you avoid the chimney itself. This checks the flashing, the metal woven into the shingles, and the cricket, which is the little triangular roof diverter behind the chimney.
So you're testing the roof-to-chimney connection.
Exactly. And again, if it leaks, you stop. You found the problem. If not, step three.
Step three.
The upper roof. You go higher up the slope. You check any valleys that feed water into the area. Maybe the leak is 10 feet up the roof, but the water is running down the felt paper and only showing up at the chimney penetration.
So it's a decoy leak.
A classic decoy. And finally, if none of that has worked,
Finally, you spray the top.
finally the crown and top. You finally get to spray the cap, the crown, and the flue. If it leaks now, you know it's the top components.
It really is an investigation. You're eliminating suspects one by one.
It is the only way to be sure. Otherwise, you're just guessing and throwing money at repairs that might not work.
So bringing this all together, we started by saying a chimney looks simple, but it's actually a complex machine. And after going through this guide, I feel like machine is the right word. It's a machine that is constantly under attack.
It's an active system. That is the key synthesis here. It's not a passive exhaust pipe. We have the physics of corbelling, ensuring the bricks don't expose their hollow cores. We have the chemistry of gas condensation, turning your fireplace into a water generator. We have the unwinnable war against lateral rain.
And the consequences are real. It's not just a wet log in the fireplace. It's rotted framing, mold, dissolved mortar, and structural instability.
Dry is the only standard that matters. If a chimney isn't dry, it is dying. That is the reality the source material drives home.
It really makes you look at that fireplace differently. I want to leave our listeners with a thought that struck me while reading the section on gas appliances.
Go for it.
If you have a gas fireplace and you use it all winter, you're essentially generating gallons and gallons of water inside your walls. The question is, do you know where that water is going?
That is the provocative question. Is your liner insulated? Is it sized right? Or is your chimney slowly dissolving from the inside out while you sit there enjoying the fire, thinking everything is fine?
Something to mull over next time you flip that switch. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay dry out there.
See you next time.